The worst airport security fails of all time.
From weapons to animals and even body parts, you wouldn't believe half of the wild things people have tried to smuggle onto an airplane. A man in the Dominican Republic tried to take advantage of American airport security agents by faking a disability, only to suffer instant karma. The 22-year-old boarded an international flight to North Carolina riding an electric wheelchair. After his wheelchair tested positive for drug residue, security rolled the man aside and discovered a staggering 23 pounds of cocaine hidden inside its cushions and frame, worth over $370,000 stateside. Even though the smuggler's legs actually worked, there was nowhere left to run. We've all heard outrageous legends of the Florida man, but likely none as bird-brained as this one. TSA agents in Fort Lauderdale, Florida discovered someone trying to sneak a handgun onto a flight by hiding it inside of a whole raw chicken. Of course, agents couldn't resist publicly shaming the paltry excuse for the gun smuggler on social media, tweeting out a very punny message. Stuffing a firearm in your holiday bird for travel is just a waste of time, so don't wing it. A man was caught in Norway attempting to smuggle in 24 exotic reptiles, consisting of 14 ball pythons and 10 geckos. In his attempt to hide the animals, he stuck them into stockings and taped them all along his body. With the animals crawling around under his clothing, the lumps on his body were noticed by border guards, who swiftly apprehended him. When asked why he'd attempted this illegal and very strange caper, the man simply replied, "I'm an absolute reptile nut." I guess he'd have to be a little nutty to think he could get away with it. They say a good hairline is worth its weight in gold, but one Indian man might have taken that saying a little too seriously. After seeing an odd shape on his skull through the x-ray, security peeled his wig back to discover a massive quantity of melted gold underneath, which he had attempted to smuggle to avoid paying import taxes. 1,000 tons of cocaine are smuggled from Colombia every year. But thanks to two harebrained women, that number was about 4 kilos short in 2022. At two different Colombian airports, sensors were set off when women with huge, puffy hairstyles passed through. In both cases, security pulled the women aside, and after a quick check of their stylish hairdos, dozens of hidden vials containing cocaine were found nested among their wild hair extensions, which added more than 4 pounds to each of their heads. When scanning a laptop at Richmond Airport, TSA agents discovered more than just a high-end GPU inside. A would-be smuggler had artfully hidden a knife inside the computer, perfectly placed between its inner parts. Clever, but not clever enough. After the Chinese government levied a high import tax on all smartphones brought into the country, a massive tech black market was born. iPhone smugglers like this man tried to make a massive profit by taping hundreds of iPhones all over their bodies and even sewing them into their clothes. But with a belt of iPhones peeking out of this guy's pants, it wasn't hard for security to catch on to what he was doing. Another man was caught attempting the same thing. But of course, all it takes is a single step through the x-ray machine for them to get caught red-handed. Drug smugglers have got to be some of the most crafty people on the planet. One of the craziest, though, has got to be the case of this 28-year-old Canadian woman who faked being pregnant in an attempt to smuggle $60,000 worth of cocaine from Colombia back to Canada. The woman wore a fake latex pregnancy belly stuffed with drugs, but got caught after airport security asked how far along she was. They noticed her reacting oddly to what should have been a fairly easy question to answer. Police arrested the woman, and while they let her hide her face for the cameras, they made sure to get her fake belly in full view as a sign to smugglers to get to work on their next wild scheme, because this one hadn't delivered. Sometimes it's more than just objects that security needs to look out for. Every year, thousands of migrants try entering Europe for a better life, and they'll try anything and everything to get past the border. Two men were desperate enough to bury themselves inside of small mattresses that were strapped onto the roof of a van. At the Spain-Morocco border, guards grew suspicious of the mattresses, and after carving them open, they discovered the two men huddled inside. Hopefully, they were well rested for their trip back home. If you thought drugs and guns were the worst thing airport security had to deal with, you'd be sorely mistaken. Smugglers were caught trying to hide 750 tarantulas in gift-wrapped boxes of oatmeal cookies. Definitely not what you'd want to find when you reached inside for a snack. Each tarantula could have sold for up to $6,700, with the total confiscated haul worth over $350,000. Some say pigeons are the rats of the sky, but for one Australian man, pigeons are worth a whole lot more than rats. Officials in Melbourne caught a man trying to smuggle 2 pigeons inside his pants from Dubai. Now I checked, and there are in fact pigeons in Australia, so this man surely had a very intimate relationship with these birds to try smuggling them home the way he did. If you're ever annoyed by having to take your shoes off at the airport, you can blame people like this guy. Security found it odd that despite being on a 2-day trip, the man had a large number of shoes packed away in his suitcase. The X-ray machine found an anomaly in the shoes, and after pulling back the bottoms, they discovered packages of narcotics hidden inside. TSA agents in New York City found themselves in quite a nutty situation when they came across a jar of peanut butter that was setting off their sensors. After taking a closer look, they were horrified to discover a passenger had tried smuggling in a disassembled pistol inside the jar. Australia's world famous for its unique, fascinating, and often deadly wildlife. Some Australian animals are so sought after that they can fetch absurdly high prices in exotic pet black markets. 2 Japanese men involved in one of these animal smuggling rings were caught in an airport in Perth after their luggage started moving on its own during a security check. After x-raying their bags, security made a heart-wrenching discovery. Tightly packed into small boxes in the corner of a suitcase were 13 bobtail lizards. In Hong Kong, where these men were headed, just one of these rare reptiles can sell for over $10,000. In pursuit of profits, the men had left the lizards crammed in those containers for over 8 days without food or water. Thankfully, these animal abusers were arrested, and the lizards were released back into their natural habitat. Airport security agents in Baltimore were worried they had come across a Ninja Turtles luggage when x-rays revealed a sai, nunchucks, and a traditional style knife hidden in a carry-on bag. However, it wasn't a hero in a half shell, but just a wannabe ninja who found himself behind bars for trying to smuggle undeclared weapons. While some drug smugglers' plans must work, some seem so dumb it's almost like they're trying to get caught. Like this 65-year-old Colombian man who just plopped a pound of cocaine onto his head and thought he'd be able to get it past airport security with a terribly fitted toupee and a hat. In 2005, airport security in Australia thought one woman's appearance seemed fishy. After arriving from Singapore, customs officials said her skirt made a flipping noise and discovered something unbelievable when they searched her. This woman had somehow snuck 51 live exotic fish onto a plane by putting them in water-filled bags that lined a specifically designed apron covered in pockets. Thankfully, the fish were relocated, and the woman was fined for smuggling wildlife. In 2013, Chicago O'Hare Airport security found themselves stuck with containers stuffed with 18 decapitated human heads. Don't worry though, this wasn't a serial killer shipping off his trophies, but rather heads used for anatomical research. The heads had been shipped to a lab in Rome originally, but on their way back, the boxes didn't have the correct paperwork, leaving the TSA agents scratching their heads. Thankfully, when the news broke, the proper recipient came forward. Though it's gotta be awkward to show up in person and ask to pick up your 18 decapitated heads.